Hello and welcome to the Warp Shelf. I'm Frank Duran.
I'm Deshaun Vasquez.
And today, two artists are reaching into the pile of film, video games, TV, media in general, art?
Lots of art.
Art? Question mark? To find out that
what's worth taking with you.
Yeah, exactly. Today we are doing more of our AFI Top 100 list. We've been going through the American Film Institute's top 100 movies, and we've been going down, and if you could check out those other episodes, but you don't need to watch those episodes to get this. This is going to be a specific review about Blade Runner. We're very excited to talk about this because this is one of the things that, like, me and Deshaun are good friends, long friends, but something we've always disagreed upon is our love for Blade Runner. And so, like, Deshaun has a ton of notes for this one. We both rewatched this right before going into this. This is something that we're not going in just blind. We wanted to, like, re-up our eyes on this and make sure that we had good opinions that are current, you know, instead of something that our college selves had. So, like, we do want to, like, get deep on what makes Blade Runner work, and for me, what it makes it not work. But also, but that's kind of the what's going on here today. Is Sean's a big fan of this. I'm not as big of a fan of Blade Runner. And I know, blasphemous. As a sci-fi guy, I don't like Blade Runner as much as the other guys, but we'll get into why as we go along. But I do want to start off with, Deshaun, why do you think Blade Runner's on the AFI's top 100 list?
Well, for one, this is no minor note, but it effectively invented a subgenre.
Yeah, so cyberpunk basically just was basically like, here you go. Here's like
the two milestones when people talk about like the genesis of like the cyberpunk genre are Blade Runner and the book Neuromancer by William Gibson, but Neuromancer didn't come out until 2 years after Blade Runner.
Oh, okay, so it may have been drawing some inspiration too, you know, like
yeah. And then you see how the influence sort of has like a domino effect, because then Blade Runner then affects The Matrix and then affects Akira, which on their own become a huge like domino effect of influence.
It's kind of this in a lot of sci-fi tales, it's very either utopia or dystopia, and this is very dystopian future, like, you know, all like this melding of cultures all slapped together because the upper class has been able to shove people down to make this like weird, just lower class culture that runs through Blade Runner here. That like everyone in this city is very, and it works for what's happening. It's a film noir. Basically, guys, this is a film noir. I think that's my number one thing that I love about this movie is this is a film fucking noir. This movie could have walked out of the 30s if it didn't have all the sci-fi going on, you know, like
absolutely.
It really could have. And even some of the lines that like Harrison Ford has to deliver to his like is the deputy or whatever his name is, the head cop there. Some of the lines he hits, you're just like, Jesus, like what year is this? Like you're like, oh my goodness. Like he was like, I was quit, but now I'm double quit, you know, like, and you're just like
I was quit before I came here. I'm twice as quit now.
Which, first off, is a very badass line, but you're like, oh wow, okay, that's what we're going with.
Yeah, same thing with the line. It's just like, you stop right there.
Yeah,
you know what the score is, pal? If you're not cops, you're little people.
Yeah, right. You're just like, oh my goodness. You're just like, what the hell? And I love, I kind of love that it sticks to that noir route pretty much the entire time. Sure, this is cyberpunk, but this is neo-noir embodied, you know, like, is that we took the noir sensibilities and took it into the future, you know, like.
Yeah, and you have to place it in its own time as to what films like this that tried to take place in the future would look like from an aesthetic standpoint. Because you would
Yes.
have stuff like 2001 or more like cheesy adaptations of like Fahrenheit 451, where everything was like clean and sterile and
Yes.
white.
Exactly. And it's very much a future we didn't get to see that often, you know, like even with Star Wars, it was still that's beat up, but not, you know, like it's not like this, you know, like all the time, at least, you know, like, and like this seedy underbelly.
It also provides like a perfect framework because it takes place on an Earth that seems like it's more or less abandoned, as they keep pushing like the off-world colonies as like a better place to live. Let's just leave Earth to kind of
just leave. And basically it means that like anybody who's here on Earth is a like dregs, like they couldn't make it, like they couldn't. There's some reason they weren't sent off planet to be, you know, like upper class or whatever they want to. That's what I think is cool about this, is that it's not often yelling about class warfare, but that's what the underbelly of the like the world building is going on, you know, like it doesn't really, the plot is that Harrison Ford has gets an assignment, he's pretty much retired, gets an assignment to hunt down some replicants, and then he gets in a twisted mystery to hunt down these replicants. That's the basic plot, but there's obviously a lot more going on here, you know, like, and that basically comes from set design. I think that's the number one, my reason why this movie's on this list is and reason why you need to watch this as like a film buff if you haven't watched Blade Runner yet, or you're just wondering, you know, you've seen Blade Runner and you're kind of like, well, what makes this so special? Look at how impeccable the set design is constantly. The production design is off the charts, and what they're able to accomplish for the time is incredible, but also just the feel, the vibe, the atmosphere of what they're able to build says so much on screen. And sure, you know, like we've gone into the world where Disney and Star Wars are like constantly making these like deep sets that like, you know, you can walk through and it's this whole environment, but like it's very old Hollywood to do that, you know, like, so that it's like, it's one of those things that I don't know if we would get something as extravagant as Blade Runner today in its set design, but like it sells
even Blade Runner 2049 still like used green screen where it had to,
right? And of course there's tons of special effects all in this. There's even the final cut is what I watched on HBO. It's the most accessible cut. We will talk about the cuts in a second.
I have a whole notes about all the different cuts.
Deshaun's gonna explain the fucking cuts.
I think that's the only one where I actually have to like read my notes verbatim as opposed to like glancing at them and just going off.
Is that like it, so that's the most accessible cut. They have some CGI worked in on this, especially for the towers that we come in on. They're miniatures in the original cuts, and in this one they were like, why are we doing this? We can make this beautiful Blade Runner CGI building, you know, like, and do the same shot, which was I think it looks good. I do think it takes a bit away from things, but it is good. They do a lot of what the updates that they did to the CGI here are solid, because there's not much, you know, like it's not like Star Wars cut where you're like, oh, why did they add 5 different characters in the background? You know, like this is very like
they actually mentioned that. I watched Dangerous Days, which is like the 3.5 hour making of documentary and like retrospective on Blade Runner, which is included on the Blu-ray. Support physical media, guys.
That's the show.
And they had brought up, even Ridley himself was just like, we don't want to go overboard and do what the Star Wars movies did with like replacements.
Yes.
We don't want to make it too egregious. We just kind of want to clean up certain things.
Now, okay, so I guess I think that's one of the reasons why somebody's listening, is they got to understand why there's so many fucking cuts about Blade Runner. So Deshaun, fucking explain what the hell is going on here, because it has more cuts than most films. I have been told several times in my watching journey of Blade Runner, which now I've seen it like 4 or 5 times. I've seen this movie, 6 times, and like, and I've watched different cuts, a lot of different cuts, and like, I've been told I've watched the wrong cut. So Deshaun, what's going on?
Okay, so in order of like exactly release, there's the original work print.
Yeah.
Which was shown to 2 cities, only 2 cities in the country for test audience purposes.
Okay.
And the negative feedback of it was the thing that led the studio to like trimming it down and adding the infamous narration.
Okay.
But then later on, years after the original theatrical run, the print leaked and it would be screened unofficially at like road shows and novelty theaters.
Okay.
So it was sort of like this word of mouth thing, just like, oh wow, there's a version of Blade Runner out there that doesn't have narration and it's like darker and it doesn't have like the stupid tacked on ending. So that was and because that had gotten popular and would like sell out screenings whenever it was available, that was the thing that led Warner Brothers to be like, why don't we just do this officially? So that would lead to like the director's cut and then eventually the final cut later.
And Ridley's been involved with all of these. Like, that's the good news about this. This is not like random. Like, the studio's not stepping in and being like, we made a new cut for you. It's like Ridley Scott's like, okay, I've done some work on this, which, you know, like, you got to be like, ooh, about that, but go on.
Yeah. After that is the original theatrical version that we got in the States, which is the added narration, different endings, certain scenes cut out.
Okay.
Then there's the international version, which is the one that other countries had gotten. Basically the same, except the instances of violence are a little more extended. Like the way Tyrell is killed with like the fingers through the eyes and stuff like that. That wasn't in the original theatrical version, but like the international had that. So like the international was just a little more violent.
Okay. All right. I dig it. They're like, they can handle it. Americans can't.
Yeah. Well. And then come 1991, we get the director's cut, which was edited by the studio with Scott's approval to coincide with like the theatrical re-release. At least the first time they tried to like really push a theatrical re-release for it. Removed the voiceover and got rid of the stupid happy ending from the theatrical cut.
Yeah, what? I mean, it's spoilers, but like, so the ending of the final cut is them getting into the elevator. I can't remember what is the like happy ending that gets
in
cut?
The theatrical ending.
Sorry, spoilers, guys, if you're not there yet in the watch, but watch Blade Runner, come back.
After the elevator closes, it cuts to them driving away outside of the city because it looks completely different.
Okay.
It's like day, it's bright and hopeful, and it's about them, and it's basically just Harrison Ford. It's basically just like Deckard and Rachel like driving off to their new life together, and it ends on a such more like optimistic note, just like we're lovers now, aren't we? It's like, yes, we are. It's just like I don't know how long we'll have together. Who knows? Blah 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 blah. It's so schmaltzy, and it just looks like it looks like such a tacked on edition that was shot way after the fact, just so the way it's framed and the fact that they reused some like unused helicopter footage from The Shining for like the establishing wide.
And you're like, wait,
because they had like no time or money to like shoot anything else, so they had to like use what they could. They had to directly contact Stanley Kubrick just to be like, I know you shot a shitload of helicopter footage. I'm sure there's stuff that you didn't use. Can we use it? And he's like, sure.
It's actually kind of legendary, though. Like, just using The Shining and splicing it in. You're like, Jesus, that's wild.
Yeah.
Like,
it definitely, you could tell it's not the direct shot from The Shining that we get with like the helicopter footage, which is nice, but it's still just like, come on.
Yeah, you're like, what the fuck? So okay, I'm glad you told me because I kind of like I when I was watching the final cut last night, it ended on the elevator scene, and I remember and I thought to myself, I don't think that's the ending I remember. You know, like I'm like I don't remember that ending, and I kind of liked that so much more. Them like escaping into the elevator with the origami,
with the unicorn origami, and the idea that like, oh, they're probably just on the run now.
Yes, and I like that because that's kind of where they pick up in 2040, 2049. Is that like it's kind of like way after that, you know, like instead of being like, you know, like it's
directors
still going.
directors and final, both the directors and the final cut, I'll get into the final cut details specifically, also push the implication that maybe Deckard is a replicant himself, which isn't really present in the original versions.
So okay, yeah, we need to talk about that because I like they say those lines. They're like, "Have you tried that test on yourself?" You know, like, "Have you, you know, like, have you done?"
Yeah,
these things?
and that's
but
still
they
there.
don't
But
give
there's
them
like
the shine
little
in the
stuff
eyes.
that's pushed. Yeah,
they don't give them the shine in the eyes. You know, like so that's the thing, right? You know, like that's if you didn't notice, guys, all the replicants have like photo red eyes, like literally an old camera went off and their eyes are red, you know, like that's what it looks like when they turn towards the camera, which is a great effect, and I love it when they do it on the owl too, you know, like it's awesome. But they don't ever do it on Deckard, so I don't, you know, like, but maybe, you know, whatever.
They do it once. It's very subtle because he's like behind Rachel and he's out of focus, but you can see that his eyes are that way.
All right.
So for Final Cut, this was made to mark like the 25th anniversary of the film at the time. And this was, as opposed to Scott being like, yeah, that seems okay, you guys go ahead. This was the one that was like overseen by Scott directly.
Okay.
Like he's in the editing booth. He's the one like overseeing the new footage and stuff.
That's good. That's good to know.
So the extended violence scenes from the international cut are incorporated. Voiceover and theatrical ending are removed, just like the directors.
Yes, and I will say one of my grips with it back in the day was how bad that narration was. I remember I watched it the first time with no narration, thought it was kind of meandering. And then I watched with the narration. I was kind of like, no, that didn't help much. You know, like that didn't speed it up or keep me engaged because Harrison's falling asleep too. You know, like, and you're just like,
oh yeah,
you're like,
you can find. There's also audio footage from that documentary of him like in the recording booth going through takes after takes, and he just sounds miserable. It's just like, this is so stupid. Why do we need this? This makes no sense.
No, I'm glad I watched the final cut here because it was nice. No narration. I thought it added a lot of atmosphere, you know, like not having him narrate, and it adds, and yes, it holds on shots like there's narration there, but like in a thoughtful way, you know, like not
instead
like,
it just sort of lets you bathe in the world.
Yes, which is what I think it needs with the amazing set that's going on, you know, like why we don't need Deckard to explain anything too. It's a really simple plot, to be fair. It goes into some really deep implications, of course, but like, and has some deep thoughts on things, but like overall, it is a very simple, like film noir, like crime, better stop them fugitives type of story, you know, like, and yeah. So it's like you didn't need that narration. I didn't need fucking explanations.
And there's obviously digitally remastered from the original negative, so it looks fantastic, which is the one that's on HBO Max.
It did look fantastic, I will say.
Very good transfer. And then there's additional scenes added, like the that one shot where like Deckard's sort of like in a haze and he seems to be like daydreaming, and you get that footage of like the unicorn galloping.
Yeah.
That was actually that was like unused footage from Legend, which Ridley Scott also directed.
I thought so. I was like, this isn't even the same movie. Like, dude, we've been playing so much Framed WTF that like I'm starting to like, you know, like I've always done this, like analyzing frames and style and the way it's shot, but like especially with that unicorn shot, I was like, this isn't even the same fucking movie. Like, I was like, wait a fucking minute. Like, this isn't even the same director of photography. What the fuck is going on? You know? Like, and
I think it works only because it's supposed to be like this weird dream sequence. So
I do think
it could. doesn't necessarily have to look like the world we've established.
It definitely didn't throw me off, but it's just because like I sit there analyzing that shit that I was like, this isn't the fucking same like cinematographer. This isn't the same director of photography. What the fuck?
That's another add-on to like further emphasize maybe Deckard's a replicant, because you get the origami unicorn from Gaff later. Like maybe he's in on it.
Yeah, right. You're just like,
And then there are several replacements, which has its own little sub paragraph here. So the big ones you had already mentioned, like some of the cityscape, which is very like minor touches. It's not as big a replacement as you think.
Yeah, because they're obviously using the same frame. If you line them up,
yeah,
it's the same. Like I could tell.
So the big replacements for the final cut: one, the Zora chase scene when he's chasing down the female replicant and guns her down in the street.
Yeah.
Originally in the theatrical cut, that was pretty much completely done by a stunt woman, and it did not match at all.
Yeah.
Because they were out of time, out of money. So they didn't even bother to give the stunt performer like a decent wig to even match Joanna Cassidy. So it just looks super jarring, and it's so funny to watch. So what they did for the final cut is that they actually brought Joanna Cassidy in.
Wow.
And they filmed new green screen material so they could do a head replacement.
Wow. That's great. That's awesome.
And thankfully, despite it being like over 2 decades later, like Joanna Cassidy basically hadn't aged that much. And when you watch it, most people don't even seem to notice. For 2007, it's really impressive.
Yeah, no, it is
as a head replacement.
I would say because you had the head replacements of the time were replacing the girl's face in Jurassic World 2. Jurassic Park 2, and you're like that wasn't a great face replacement. This I didn't even fucking notice. It didn't even fucking strike me as like much had changed. Other than it just looked good. Like I was kind of like yeah, it looks good.
Pretty seamless. Especially for, God, I can't believe it. 2007 was this long ago. I was like a junior in high school. No,
pain.
Sophomore.
Pain.
So, and then the other one is for the talk with Abdul, who's the person who made the genetically created snake.
Yes.
In the original scene, the lip flaps don't match whatsoever when they're speaking. And there's still a little bit of that present in the final cut, but it is bad. It's like Abdul is speaking and the ADR doesn't match, and Harrison Ford speaking and it doesn't match. It's like you're watching a dub of a Godzilla movie. It's really bad.
You're just like,
and
what
they even tried to like dig through the archives to see if they could find like the original audio for it, or maybe like a different take where it does match so they could sync it up better, and they just couldn't find anything. So what they did instead was they had Harrison Ford's son come in as a mouth match to read the lines properly timed, and they did a mouth replacement so that it was properly
So they basically
synced.
Animated it? They basically just like Robot Chicken moved their mouth and made it work? That's wild.
Yeah, mouth replacement. Again, 2007. Again, it's pretty fucking seamless. You wouldn't notice it unless you were looking for it.
Yeah, no, I thought I did think the angle in that scene was weird. I did think it was like obviously not the main
like
camera,
through the window
almost.
and like yeah.
I did like it though. It was like a feel.
That's just the way it was shot. Yeah,
I like it, but
and then there was like
that's the thing I will say about this. I know we're going into the cuts, but like that's the number one thing I will say about this. This feels like a Ridley Scott movie, but Ridley was taking some like leaps here. That he doesn't take as much anymore, and I think that his leaps in style here is really cool. I think he's like, it's not often feels like a Ridley Scott movie, but like is obvious, obviously still hit all him, but it's like a different flavor.
Yeah, I would say so. And then there was additional Foley produced because there were instances in the original cut where there was just straight up sound missing.
You're like, they're walking and they're like, no, nothing.
Yeah, it's pretty egregious. Like there's there's like stuff where like when Zora's falling after she gets shot and you barely hear any sound, you just hear like the glass breaking, but none like the impact of when she falls, or like maybe not the flap of like that raincoat she's wearing. So they had to like add little stuff like that.
Yeah. And you're like,
As you can tell, this film had a pretty like troubled production. Not entirely troubled, but like it was stressful.
Yeah.
Because Ridley Scott just going over budget, and the idea that they had to like wrap up without having the time and money to like do it properly.
Oof.
Which is why you get shit like whatever, unused footage from The Shining and just a static shot in a fake car. Whatever. We gotta get this done.
It's so funny.
Oh, this is missing a sound effect. We don't have fucking time for that.
It's like, yep, gotta get it out.
And then another replacement is when Batty dies and he lets go of the dove and it flies off.
Yeah.
In the original theatrical cut, it was very clearly like a rush shot, like near a warehouse or something, and it doesn't match the background at all. You see like a shipping crate, like a giant shipping crate, and it's also very clearly in the middle of the fucking day as the dove flies off. So what they did was they replaced it with like a brand new, like created background where it actually looks like the architecture of the apartments around where they fought, and it's actually raining and night.
Yeah, you're like few things that make it the same scene. Yeah, I mean, there's a couple reasons right there, you know, why I didn't love it the first time, you know, like I was watching it, like, you know, those endings and like, and this time rewatching it, I will say, I enjoyed it a lot more than I've ever enjoyed it, you know, like I really did. You know, like I was always kind of super critical of this movie. And I still will be a little bit. I have some actual points, but overall, it's a gorgeous movie that is really overall fun to watch, and then has like deeper meanings going on with all the replicants and just being able to fucking murder them in the streets. You're just like, Jesus Christ, like they're not citizens at all, you know, like Jesus.
Exactly. That's right from the opening crawl with the whole just like, this isn't called execution, it's called retirement, and you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah, you're like, oh. and that's what I mean by like even more class warfare, is that like there's the lower class of everyone living on Earth, and then there's just replicants who it doesn't matter, kill them, you know, like it does, you know, like if they're not useful, murder them, you know, like it's so wild. And you're just like, damn. But I really did think that that a lot of the cinematography was absolutely spectacular, and it's something to like, the reason to watch this movie is there's some shots in here that like are just paintings, you know, like they're just paintings. They're absolutely Ridley Scott's best framings, like in his entire career most of the time, you know, like you're just like, Jesus Christ, like these are incredible, you know. I mean, Alien rivals it too, you know, like I'm not gonna you know, like fully like say that isn't what he's done there. Like
that's actually a good segue, because there's connections to Alien and Dune here as far as like the making of Blade Runner is concerned, and I have a big note about that too.
Okay, all right.
So originally, before we had gotten the David Lynch version of Dune in the 80s, there was one being made by Alejandro Jodorowsky.
Yes.
There's a whole documentary about the making of and how that film eventually didn't happen, which is a great documentary. But it assembled like a team of creatives that would eventually go on to work on Alien, including H.R. Giger.
Yes.
And like Dan O'Bannon, who wrote Alien and would also work on the visual effects for Blade Runner. And Scott was initially hired to pick up the pieces of Jodorowsky's Dune, as like that project was starting to fall apart.
Yeah.
And he initially didn't, because one, he had just done Alien, so he was kind of skeptical about jumping into just another sci-fi project like right afterwards. That, and his brother was sick.
Oh, Tony?
Yeah.
Oh,
no, dang. This was before Tony. They both had another brother who actually passed away before.
Oh, that's really sad. Like, dang. 80s.
Yeah.
Dang. That sucks.
And so he didn't do it. But when he
Which,
did
by the way, I
eventually,
actually always used to be like, I love Tony Scott more than I love Ridley. But, like, I was a little shit. But, because
just to be the real fucking hipster.
you had to be a real hipster. You're like, well, if you saw Tony's BMW shorts with Clive Owen, you would really appreciate him. You're like, which is my only arguments for that. I was always just like, I love Clive Owen and I love these shorts. These are great. Like, go look them up on YouTube.
So,
weird little plug for that. Go check them out.
So
They're
when
weird.
he did eventually jump onto Blade Runner and Jodorowsky's Dune had pretty much completely fallen apart at that point, he was able to like assemble a lot of the same team or elements from that team of that failed movie and bring it on to Blade Runner, including Dan O'Bannon, who was going to like write it and work on the visual effects, ended up doing it for Blade Runner. So he repurposed some of his like architecture and like visual concepts for Blade Runner. And they also pulled from Mobius Art, who was also working on like the concept art stuff for Jodorowsky's Dune. So both in the past and in the present, like Dune and Blade Runner are always like super linked.
Right, super together. And yeah, which is so funny about like the new movie with Dennis. Dennis is just picking up all the pieces, you know, like it's basically it. You're just like, I love that. And I mean that I think we done an episode on 2049? I thought we did an episode on
I don't think we did. I think we talked about it when we did our belated sequels episode.
Thank you. Yes.
I
know we did like a long talk about this, but like it was a while ago. So definitely check out scroll way down, guys, on the podcast list. Just and go to that belated sequels. And I always will say I liked that more than this, but I see why this is a classic. I see why this is heralded as like a father of sci-fi. Now let me get into what we're going to be arguing about here. is that I again almost fell asleep in this movie. I've watched this movie so many times, but I've also fallen asleep like twice during it and had to go back and finish the movie, you know, like several times. And it's always the same point. It's after that first half an hour and like Deckard's out there checking, you know, the files and stuff like that. I don't know why that whole bit slows down so completely. And that's
is it the bit where he's like where he's like scouting out the apartment through the technology and like enhance move 45 degrees, blah, blah, blah. That
Which
scene goes on forever.
I do like that. But it's not just that scene. It's everything like around that scene. They kind of lose the urgency and the stakes around there.
I can see that.
And that's what my argument now that like, because earlier when I was younger, I was just like, it's slow. I fell asleep because it got slow. But that's really not it, is that they kind of lose the investigation a little bit in those scenes. And it's kind of my problem with the movie is that it's a very simple plot, but it finds itself sometimes just like escaping the plot, coming back, you know, like, and I feel like that's my kind of like issue with its pacing is that because it does move along pretty much the whole time. It does move along, but it has these like lulls where you're kind of like, this isn't progressing much forward, you know, like it's cool looking, you know, like everything looks cool, but you're just like, it's not really moving much. And it's not, you know, like, I don't know. It's not saying much at those times. And, and it just feels like it's to grow the universe a little bit, you know, like to show off the technology. And I dig that. It's just what my problem is that I sat there being like, the stakes keep disappearing, you know, like we keep being like, and even towards the end there, towards the end when Roy, is it Roy, right? Or am I saying the actor's
Roy Batty,
name?
Rutger Hauer's character.
Yes, thank you. Roy kills the CEO, Tyrell, and that it's a great scene. I fucking love that scene, but it does take a lot of the stakes away from the story, you know, like and that's kind of the point, is that it's a very nihilistic like end here, you know, like is that like they were going to die anyways and soon, and there was nothing they could do about it. They were just, it's kind of anime-ish. They're literally attacking God. and they go up and they kill God. And I do. That's why I love that scene. But it definitely is like it happens before the whole Deckard chase through the building, and it's kind of just like Deckard surviving at the end, which I like, but it's kind of like, okay, so everything's gone wrong, you know, like, but we don't see what's going wrong, you know, like that's my problem.
It's also important to note that like Deckard survives because like Roy saves him.
Yes, right.
Like, that
like
last
he
bit of
could have killed
humanity
him
before he dies. Yeah. But bringing up the Tyrell scene is a good segue for like another thing that I have here, which one is rest in peace Joe Turkel, who played Tyrell.
Yes.
He was also Lloyd in The Shining. He like
so
died like
good.
2 weeks ago.
So good in this. Like I literally like the minute he's on screen in the giant office scene with the lights, which by the way, gorgeous scene. Love that scene. Feels like a painting.
Ridiculous glasses.
Yeah, the ridiculous glasses. He steals the fucking frame, you know, like he's on screen and he just fucking steals it, you know, like, and he's just so captivating.
He has even like less screen time in The Shining, but you always remember that scene with like Lloyd the bartender,
right? And
your money's
like,
no good here, Mr. Torrance.
It's literally
such a presence,
right? And it's like two very iconic roles there, you know, like he just like little screen time, huge impact.
Yeah. You always think of like actors who are in very memorable bit parts, even if they never got like huge leading man roles, at least if the big movies that you've seen, but you appreciate them because you always remember them. I think of actors like Harry Dean Stanton for that. Just like, oh, it's not one of that you immediately recognize, but then you think about all the times you've seen Harry Dean Stanton. He was in Alien and he was in The Avengers and he's in Godfather 2, always in these great little bit parts.
You're like, what? I love that.
But bringing up the Tyrell scene, there was actually supposed to be even more to that scene.
Okay.
But they like didn't have the money to shoot it. Originally, when Roy kills Tyrell, it was going to be revealed instead of blood coming out, he was actually going to see machinery. And we were going to find out that the version of
Tyrell that
we've seen has just been a stand-in. And the real Tyrell has been dead for years. And they actually find like this tomb in the Tyrell Corporation building of like a sarcophagus of him, just being like, wow, so even Tyrell is a fake.
Yeah, right. And they're already dead. He's already dead, so he can't save you, you know, like it's just already dead. I do like the implications of this more, that it's actually the creator and they kill his creator. It like I said, it's the classic JRPG anime thing of like killing God to see what happens to the world when God is dead, you know, like, and I think that's first off very powerful, and second off it's epic. It's fucking epic. And that's why I think movies like this and Star Wars, the original Star Wars, just by themselves, like A New Hope. If there was nothing else and you just saw A New Hope, all the stories that you can come up with just watching that little thing is astounding. Same thing with Blade Runner here. I feel like it sparks the imagination, you know, like just from this, you know, like you didn't need 2049. I like 2049. I like it more, but the way this is able to create a universe, I literally was watching it going, I would read a Blade Runner graphic novel, and I almost was like, should we watch the anime? And then I was like, no, that should be a completely separate episode where we watch Black Lotus.
But it doesn't look very good.
No, and that animation is kind of rough. All I did was scroll down the icons on HBO, and I was like, even just if your icon for the episode is a rough shot, I don't know how well I'm going to do trying to watch your show, you know? Like,
I will say this, the animated shorts that they did as a promotional tie-in for 2049, those were really good.
Yes, those are cool. I just think that this animation style, it doesn't work. I just saw, and you'll be proud of me, I watched a fucking anime movie that's current, but of course it's Mobile Suit Gundam, so you didn't watch it. But I watched Mobile Suit Gundam Cuckoo's Doan's Island, which is the brand new movie that just came out. I watched it legally. No, I didn't. And because there's no fucking release yet, which, by the way, if Netflix doesn't fucking release the English dub or just this, I'm gonna lose my fucking shit. But what's great about it is that they use the 3D animation just for the Gundams. So it's like the shininess of the CGI doesn't look out of place, and we still get the nice 2D animation of all the characters as they move around, you know, like, and it just works. It looks great. I thought it's one of the more stunning CGI animated things I've ever seen, you know, like, which is funny because, you know, there's like the classic Gundam shows like Igloo, which at the time were just trying to push the CGI barrier, but then it ends up looking like Initial D, you know, like where they're like, aha, we did it. And you're like, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. Like, which I tried starting Initial D, and I really love Initial D. It's one of my favorite mangas as a kid. And but those CGI cars are pretty rough, but everything else is fucking awesome. But those CGI cars being like, but I mean, come on, how do you not love that music though for the Initial D? It's dun, 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 dun.
Anyway, back to Blade Runner.
Back to Blade Runner. We got caught on the anime, but Blade Runner. The do you have any other notes before I fucking go into more? Go ahead.
So the original shortlist for Deckard before they got Harrison Ford is very interesting and has sort of a story in and of itself.
Interesting.
So originally,
which, like, if you guys don't know, Harrison Ford was basically found on set to be an actor. He wasn't a fucking actor before. It was Star Wars, right? That he was found on. Yeah, so. He was found on the set of Star Wars as a carpenter, and they loved him so much and brought him in as Han Solo, and then basically launched his career. And now we're on Indy 5 coming out. Like, come on, what a fucking legacy, you know? Like, you're like, what the hell?
I always love that old Hollywood mentality. It's just like, I like this kid. He's got moxie. Put him in the. You ever thought about being in the pictures?
And to be fair, the man's got the Hollywood face, like, you know, like, so it's like, how did nobody ever say before, like, you should be in pictures, you know? Like, I mean, first off, young Harrison Ford, it's like, I'll say it like Ewan McGregor. The man is gorgeous, you know, like young Harrison Ford. You're just like, holy shit, look at that man, you know, like you're just like, you're like, and even in this movie, he's supposed to be like old and grizzled, and you're like, no, I've seen old and grizzled Harrison Ford. This is young Harrison Ford, you know, like you're like, no, I see baby fat on that face, you know, you can't trick me, you know, like, but it's like, I think his hammy acting works in a lot of other movies, and then he really, like, in other great movies where he's really able to, like, be great in them, like Air Force One and Double Indemnity. Is one of my favorites, one of my favorite movies of all time. And he's so good in that, and he's able to bring such an intensity. He's able to do great things in this movie. Is he great in this? Questionable. There's a few scenes where he's like doing really derpy faces, and you're just kind of like, you're like,
yeah.
And it's like,
I also find the scene with Zora hilarious, where he like puts on the voice.
Yeah, actually, I really love that. I was like, look at Harrison Ford fucking flexing his acting ability here. Like, I was like, look at this. I actually really love that scene. I was like, it's so it is kind of goofy though, but I was like, so
the original shortlist for Deckard was, interestingly enough, Dustin Hoffman.
Was Dustin Hoffman up for every fucking role back then? I feel like he's the Leonardo DiCaprio of that generation, where they were just like, yeah, you know who's up for this role? Dustin Hoffman. And then those other actors would be like, I gotta be it, you know, like they do now, where they're like, oh, we have Leonardo DiCaprio attached. They're like, well, if Leonardo wants it, I want it, you know, like it's kind of like a tactic almost, you know, like to use this one guy as like well, I have him cast, and you know, like, you know, like,
Dustin Hoffman, Peter Falk, Al Pacino, Nick Nolte. Al Pacino.
Can you imagine Al Pacino doing like the Heat voice as he shoots down the girl in the street? Stop!
Nick Nolte and Burt Reynolds.
Burt Reynolds would have been another fucking movie. This would not be the same fucking movie if Burt Reynolds sitting there twisting his mustache as he's eating noodles. Like, what is like what?
But they got so far into getting Dustin Hoffman that like Ridley Scott had already met with him, talked about the project, and you can see concept art with his likeness.
Really, that's cool. That's
so
actually really cool. Far. I love shit like that, you know, like where you're like, oh, look, some concept art with not the right person in it, you know, like, and you're just like, that shit always makes me happy because you're like, there was another idea here and it is gone, you know. Like,
and when they eventually started considering Harrison Ford, Raiders of the Lost Ark had already been shot. It was in the editing process at this point. And so they just contacted Spielberg to be like, can we watch dailies?
Can we watch
dailies of Raiders of the Lost Ark? And they were able to. And originally Deckard was supposed to have a hat because, you know, this typical like noir detective, he's got like the fedora, and they decided against it because they saw how prominent the hat was in Raiders of the Lost Ark. And
they're like, this guy's going to be a hat guy. We got to get rid of this.
It's going to be compared. We have to get rid of the hat.
That's wild. That's wild to think about that they like watched Raiders and was like, get rid of the hat. Nope. And I actually kind of I love the look of Deckard here. I mean, the long coat. There's a reason why there's like a fucking genre spun out of this because it like it just speaks to what you could do, you know, like, but his like, you know, you've seen tons of fantasy novels now with this kind of look, but like, you know, Deckard's got he's doing the film noir look, you know, like that long coat, you know, like short hair, you know, type of thing. Like it works, you know, obviously disheveled. I love it. You're just like,
I love that. I've always loved the design of that gun.
Oh my God. The gun. Yeah. The gun's great. I've seen
the pistol, and I love the way
when I went to Warner Brothers,
like police cars.
When I went to Warner Brothers studio, I did get to see that in person, and I was like, you beautiful looking motherfucking gun. Like, I was just like, you know, to actually not see like somebody's cosplay version of it, but like the real thing and see the details they put on and some of the like ingenuity to make it look, you know, sci-fi is just awesome. I fucking love that shit. And that definitely one of the big things. And the flying fucking cars that like look like they straight up did that effect for Back to Future 2. They were like, okay, that was a great effect in Blade Runner. Let's throw that in Back to Future 2, you know, like,
yeah, the spinners they're called.
Right, it like kind of spins up as it goes up the same way as the cars do in Back to Future 2. You're just like, there it is, you know, like, up it goes.
So I did bring up the like sort of somewhat troubled production of this earlier.
Yes,
but there was definitely some like on set just
drama.
Nothing to the point where like it verged onto like abuse or anything.
It wasn't just Stanley Kubrick.
No, but it was just a stressful like shoot that they didn't have like the money or time for, so everything had to be done and it had to be done fast.
Rough.
So like Ridley Scott had some like growing pains as well because he had primarily worked in like in the UK for like his films.
Oh, okay.
And having to transition from like the way UK film practices work versus the way the US ones worked at the time. Like sort of like nagged them, like stuff like he wasn't allowed to be his own camera operator because, you know, we want to hire a separate like cinematographer and camera operator. Ridley just being like, I've directed 1 million commercials. I'm an established director. I want to hold my own goddamn camera.
You're like, come on, give it to me. But that's like, you know, that's the way it works. You know, like,
and Scott's been known to be like a very firm like director who knows what the fuck he wants.
Yeah.
Which is more evident as Ridley Scott amuses the hell out of me the older he gets and the grumpier he gets. I love grumpy fucking artists who are just like done with everyone. I know, always cracks me up.
Mary suggested that I watch half of the movie yesterday and half this morning, and I was like, you know how mad Ridley Scott would be if I did that? You know, like, I was like, you know how fucking pissed he would be if I was like, nope, gotta stop your movie in the middle to watch it later. Like, nope. That's not how you watch movies, and Ridley Scott would fucking hate that. Like, so personally, and he'd be like, "Did you watch it on my phone? Did you watch it on a phone?" One of his my favorite old man quotes of his is, if you ever watched a movie on a phone, one of my movies on a phone, you didn't." Like,
that wasn't Ridley Scott. That was David Lynch.
Oh, no. Thank you. There you go.
But Ridley has similar sensibilities.
That's really true for Lynch. I feel like because it's like you don't get the enveloping feeling of dread
like,
from a fucking phone. You know,
tell me you're gonna fucking watch Eraserhead or Blue Velvet on your phone? Fuck off.
Can you imagine what kind of a psycho is just walking around on the T watching Eraserhead, by the way? Like what, like you're like, what fucking psycho is this? You know, like that's why I'm like almost like David Lynch, it might be just a weird enough person if they're watching your shit just like out in the open, you know? Like, you're just like, might be weird.
There was also a stigma towards like Scott from the crew because he was like English and like established over there, but still sort of new on the scene in the West.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
And it gotten to the point where like that coupled with like how direct he is and how he wants what he wants. The crew actually sort of did like a cute little mutiny.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Where the crew all had shirts printed that said, "Yes, Governor, my ass."
Oh my God.
As like a big fuck you. And in response, Scott had shirts like printed saying xenophobia sucks.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's wild. That's what my thought of that was, is that I was like, this doesn't look good for the crew almost, you know? Like, I mean, I know Ridley Scott's known for being like, a yeller, you know, like he's known for being a yeller. So like, I kind of understand, you know, like, but also you're like, are you guys just, I mean, you have to get into it. Why there's a difference is that here in America, it's a job. It's and it's a union process. So you're in, you get into a union and you work your way up. So it's like the reason why he couldn't hold his own camera is that's a fucking other job, you know, like, so you have to be in a non-union production to do that type of shit. But over in England, they literally have state funded the Academy of Film Arts, you know, like our academy over here is just the academy. It's not actually sponsored by like the British fucking government, and they actually have like an art school that they fund for film, and like that's how you get fucking people like Roger Deakins, you know, like who are just coming out of this film school and being like, I'm a master, and you're just like, all right, you're like, okay, and go wild.
It's definitely very much like they treat it like you would for a traditional job setting. Like you work down here, you get enough hours in, you get promoted. You get enough hours in, you get promoted. So Ridley Scott coming to the West at that point had already directed a bunch of commercials, had already directed stuff like Alien, so he like knew his stuff already.
Yeah, so it wasn't like he was coming in green and they were treating him like he was green almost, you know, like it's kind of the like, it doesn't look great for the crew type of situation there, but also I know he's a fucking yeller.
And so Ridley Scott he also doesn't really like to collaborate that much. The only one he likes to collaborate with is the writer, which is actually kind of commendable. He is one of those directors who says he likes to have the original writer on set with him to like help sort of like oversee it as well, because Scott has admitted that he's not much of a writer.
Okay.
So he sort of feels like he needs that guiding hand, and he likes to have the writer more involved than they normally would.
I like that.
But at the same time, he's also just like, but I'm the director. I know what I want when I'm on set. Just like, I don't need to collaborate with you. I don't need to tell you your motivation. I'll know what we're going to get.
And it's like, it's one of those things that's like, it's the terrible old Hollywood adage of like, well, he still gets results because, like, of course, Blade Runner was, you know, big, and so was Alien. It's like, you know, like he may have been a dick, but they got those results. But at least he wasn't It's like, I don't know how far it goes, but like at least he wasn't abusive. It's not like this Joss Whedon thing that came up, and you're like, he's literally threatening people's careers here. You know, like same as Stanley Kubrick, where Stanley was like threatening Duvall. You know, like I mean, it's like you know, Shelley Duvall, it's like literally like threatening people, which is where the line is, obviously, you know, like you can yell and have creative differences and argue all day long, but the minute you're threatening people, either their livelihood or their lives, that's the line. I don't know. Yeah. That's the line, you know, like, and for me, you know, like you're now being a villain, you know, like, and that's the problem, you know, like,
but a good thing to bring up is that Blade Runner is big after the fact because it was not a box office success. And that's also speaks to its appeal and also its flaws, because it is very much a cult movie.
Yes.
And cult movies are never entirely like seamless or perfect.
I would say adding more to its cult feel is the very dreamlike editing going on. I wanted to point that out when I was watching it. it's not. The editing doesn't feel sharp and like sudden. It feels very dreamlike, like very whoo, like, oh, we go into this next thing and this next thing happens, and it's like it all feels very floaty, editing wise, and I love that
Floaty's a good
because
word.
it's like you're able to get that across in just editing, like nothing else, you know, like, and I fucking love that shit, and you get it right from the beginning. The shot to the eye, to the building, to hold on the building for a really long time, building, shots of the office, you know, like it's very film noir, very dreamy, very floaty.
And originally, for like the original drafts of the script, it was even supposed to be like more like intimate and dreamlike, because they brought in Hampton Fancher, who tried to make it a little more like the original, like Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep.
Brought it back
like,
to Philip K. Dick, sort of.
Very like low stakes, just exploring human nature. Very novelistic, if you want to put it that way.
And I will say that like that's the argument against my like the stakes disappear type of thing, is that this isn't supposed to have gigantic stakes, you know? This is really supposed to just be like what happens when these androids are running out of their lives, and it's kind of like a hostage situation going on.
That was actually like my concern going into 2049, was that they would try to make it into a blockbuster. I'm like, Blade Runner shouldn't be a blockbuster.
It shouldn't
really.
be
it should be a much more intimate type of movie,
right? It shouldn't be like saving the galaxy. It's like exploring these people's lives, you know, like, and I thought that's the interest, but they still lose the stakes in that, you know, like where they introduce J.F. Sanderson and Sebastian. Sorry, thank you. And I love his little character, and it's a great setting for the final fight, of course. But it's one of those things where they kill him completely off screen in the final cut, and they kind of bring up that he's dead in another scene, and like,
well, I actually like that, because you get once he kills Tyrell, you see Roy turn back to Sebastian, and he like, just says, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And he says, I'm sorry. And he says, come here, Sebastian. And I think it's sadder that he just kind of kills him off screen.
Yeah.
Especially because he was so kind to them.
Yeah. And that's, but it also is like another character you cared about that is just gone, you know, like, is my argument for that. But I know what you're saying. It's actually kind of masterful the way they do it, like off screen.
But part of the reason why 2049 might work for you is that it is more consistently like intimate and dreamlike, because that was the one where like Hampton Fancher also wrote 2049 with Michael Green, and he had a little more input on it. Because on the original, he had like written the draft, and they were just like, this is great, but we need to punch this up. We need to make this commercial. So then they brought in David Peoples, who like really added some more grit to it.
Yeah.
David Peoples would eventually go on to write 12 Monkeys.
Nice. There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. One of the great sci-fi movies. I don't know why I don't think that's on this list. And I think that does go. Oh, is it not American? That's the question. I don't know.
It might not be, because Terry Gilliam directed it.
Yeah, so it might be a
English.
British movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. There you go. That explains why it's not on the list.
But yeah, so there you have like two differing philosophies. Hampton Fancher wanted it to be slow, intimate, very much like the novel, to the point where like the original opening for it was going to be that opening that we got in 2049, where it's like guy walks in, like guy we don't know walks into the apartment, replicant is boiling soup and stuff like that. That's from the original draft of the first movie.
Really? Okay.
That was like repurposed for 2049.
That's dope. I love that.
So stuff like that. And you could tell like the sort of clashing ideologies of like the directions they're taking, which also makes the film stick out. One of the funniest things you can do if you have the Blu-ray is watch the commentary track with Fancher and Peoples, because it's the most passive aggressive thing you'll ever hear. Because it's basically just like, the whole thing is basically just like, oh, who wrote this? You wrote this, didn't you? It's like, no, I would never write that. This sounds like something you would write. The whole thing is so passive aggressive. It's so fucking funny. Like, there's compromise there, and they do get along, and they're just like, hey, it all worked out. Blade Runner is a great movie, but just like the picking apart of just like, this should have just been my script, and then you had to come in and ruin it. It's hilarious.
That's wild. That's so funny. I love that. That's crazy. Overall, my thoughts are that this is it's a landmark sci-fi. You know, like it's beautiful in its imagery, in its set design, its production design, its cinematography. Do I think it will be everyone's cup of tea? No, because it's a slow burner, and that's most people will be, and young college Frank would be very mad about it. You know, like would just be like too slow, stupid, sci-fi, boom, 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 boom. You know, like
where are the lightsabers?
Yeah, where the lightsabers? Where's the pew pew? You know, like I'm glad I'm able to look beyond that and see everything now. And I will say I do enjoy this, and I see why this is on the list. And I see it, you know, because it's legendary in it's just air and the way it moves around itself, you know, like especially in the final cut. And you were saying all the influences, like if it's influenced Akira, you know, that touched every fucking little thing
Akira,
ever.
Dark City, Ghost in the Shell, 12 Monkeys, which people's also worked on, The Matrix, just like those alone, just like that already sends a bunch of ripples.
Right? You're like, that's a huge amount of ripples there. And really I enjoy this movie, but I'm not head over heels. I can see why people are head over heels, though.
It was a film that had grown on me. I also wasn't head over heels. I leaned a little more positive than you did the first time I saw it. I had seen it in high school because I had a creative writing teacher who I would see like during after school hours. I'd write stories for. It was like a whole thing of only like 4 people because, you know, my school sucked and there was no creative people.
Yep.
And he had like recommended a bunch of movies to me that I'd like never seen. One of which was like American Psycho because he knew I loved horror and would exactly have that sort of like sense of humor. So that and like Blade Runner was one. And my first question, even in high school, was just like, aren't there like a million cuts of Blade Runner? Which one do I watch?
Yeah, which one?
He's just like, and he's just like, whatever is the latest one, just watch that. And
I remember the first time I watched Blade Runner was also in high school in my film class. It was one of the movies he showed one day, you know, like because he had a couple movies he would show, and this one of them was this, but before he showed it, he did show like the flying in scene, but with and without the narration. So he showed both cuts to like be like, look what this director is doing in the editing process, you know, type of thing. And it was, I mean, shout out to D-Rob, to Mr. Derek Roberts, but at Wanacon High School, man's a fucking legend. And, but like, I didn't love it at the time. And we watched it all in class, but again, I fell asleep even in class, but that didn't say fucking much. Back then I was up super late. Back then I had my high school show podcast was called Insomnia Critic because I would stay up fucking late and just review things really fucking late, which I couldn't even do now.
When we were in film school, I fell asleep during the Searchers, and it's not because the Searchers is bad. It's only because that class was at 9 in the morning, and I had to get up even earlier for my long commute. So I was fucking beat.
Which Searchers is on this list, so we will be talking about the Searcher.
So I'll actually be able to finish it.
There's a few. We'll talk about some controversies with that movie also when it comes.
There is like 2 other points I do want to make.
Yes.
This is a good segue just because we're talking about like the differences between like narration versus without narration.
Yes.
Roger Ebert originally, back when the film first came out in the 80s, had said that the world was beautifully realized, but he felt like the human story at the core was pretty thin.
Yeah.
And then he reevaluated his original review back in 2007 when the final cut came out, and he had for it. He had said that like, with the narration gone, you're allowed to like focus and absorb it all. And he felt like it inhabits, like everything inhabits the world instead of being laid on top of it without narration, which is I think a great way to put it.
I mean, as always, Roger Ebert is a fucking legend, and he's right. You know, like that was my big like watch this time, is I was kind of just like, this doesn't feel like, you know, like sci-fi. It feels like Sci-Fi, you know, like I know that sounds weird, but like it's
It
throughout the
sounds
body.
Weird. Frank's doing like a little wave with his arm for the people who are only listening.
People on audio, sorry about that. It's not it's not an open face sandwich. It's built. It's a hot pocket of that's a terrible analogy too. Okay, it's an empanada. It's not a sandwich, and in that way, it's all built in, and
it's all about the synergy.
Yes.
One of the other funniest things is like the different points on the narration. Like Guillermo del Toro is actually a big fan of the narration. He says he loves the narration and still has his Laserdisc because it includes the narration, which of course was like back then. Now he probably just has like the Blu-ray with all the different cuts available, which is the one I have, which I should have grabbed, but I'm not getting up now. But Frank Darabont is actually interviewed on the Dangerous Days documentary, and he says, especially in the end scene once Batty dies, he says the narration is like it's like you're in the middle of sex and someone pours cold water on you. He says that final speech is so beautiful about like, I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. Now those memories will all be gone like tears and rain. And then you just sit there as Deckard just watches him die. And it's just sort of like very poetic. But in the theatrical,
all of a sudden Harrison Ford comes in and
Harrison Ford's like, I don't know why he let me live. Perhaps in those final moments, he realized what it was to be human. You're like, Jesus Christ, stop it.
Stop this fucking moment. That's actually super fucking funny. I mean, to bring up that scene, I really loved that. I mean, it's this huge. It's like he's been spilling. Why can't I say it? Soliloquy like the whole time.
Soliloquy.
Yeah, he's been like shooting poetry off the whole time, and then finally like really get personal about what he actually saw and then him talking about tears in the rain. I don't know, it's beautiful, it's gorgeous, and you know, like you're just like, damn. And
the tears and rain bit was actually something that Rutger Hauer had like ad lib that's early as like the table read.
Really? That's
like
cool.
The tears and rain like bit like right at the end was actually all Rutger Hauer.
Oh my god, that's wild. It reaches into you and you're just like, ooh, like because they're treating these people not like humans. And obviously, how human is that to worry about like your memories being gone forever, you know, like, and it just disappearing, everything being gone. Hell, that's the reason why I love photography, you know, is like this slightly taking this memory and extending it beyond just your own mind, you know, like you're just like, I have captured it and here it is, you know, like, and that's why I love deep down, that's why I fucking love photography, you know, like, is that like it's encapsulating this moment so it doesn't disappear for fucking ever.
Absolutely.
And I think that moment too is just beautiful because it speaks to human fragility, longevity, and what happens after we're dead, you know, like, and all in this like really after this like great chase scene, it just all of a sudden is like whoa, you know, like, and gives you this like really philosophical like punch to the chest, and you're just like, oh shit. I actually really love that. And then him just like dying in the police head car light is fucking like you're just like, you're like, oh, it's great.
I remember Don had that as his cover photo for like the longest time because our buddy Don is also a huge Blade Runner guy. Yes. I remember I was there when he like got on you the moment you had said like, I don't like Blade Runner that much, and Don was like, watch your mouth, boy.
I know, he fucking got on me about it. And I used to in high school, in college, I had the Blade Runner umbrella too. So I was like,
I remember that, the Think Geek one.
Yeah, I had I was starting arguments because of that. I was like, it's cool, but you know, Blade Runner isn't that good. Like, and then you're just like, fight. You know, like
we did that. God, that was like us at like peak confrontational. We were so fucking confrontational in college, just like ready to fight over everything. It's just so wild.
Ready? Let's go.
One last point I do want to bring up is like sort of something that becomes more controversial as the film is aged more and more, and I definitely heard it brought up again once 2049 was like about to come out,
Okay.
is the big like love scene between Deckard and Rachel.
Is that it does feel like you're like, is it rape? No. He gets
Yeah,
consent. You know, like you're like, he
it's
got
pretty
consent.
aggressive, and that's mostly because of the way it was cut.
I think it drills even more into that like film noir feel, you know, like where it's like, yeah, even this, you know, this rough and tumble cop doesn't only knows how to love rough, you know, like, you know, like he doesn't know any other way. He just knows this
also
like
the
violent
of like, and this is more present when you actually look at like cut footage and stuff like that. There is more of like a push and a pull scenario.
Yes.
Where like he takes his shirt off, he's like washing his mouth, trying to like pull a tooth out, and she keeps like watching him, and there's like this push and pull where like she clearly is attracted to him, but there's like this idea of just like, but she also just found out that she's a replicant, so it's like this weird half and half of just like, I don't know what
I'm not human, but I'm feeling this human emotion of attraction, you know,
the
like,
intent, and it's in the script and it's in more of like the footage that they trimmed around, that like it's the idea of just like confront your feelings and just say that you want to have them.
Yes.
And that's the intention, but it's very aggressive. One, because they had to edit around like bad takes for it. Because this was one of Sean Young's first movies. She was pretty inexperienced at the time. So there was a lot of stuff they had to like cut around. So as a result, it comes off as way more aggressive than it should compared to like what's in the original script and what's in the original cut footage.
I don't know. I think it adds a little bit more to the character. I do. When I was watching it, I was like, that was aggressive. I was like, that was, but then he like, then, you know, a paragon of fucking wokeness. He fucking asks for consent, gets it, asks again, gets it, and then gets like full enthusiastic consent like several times the whole way. It's like, you know, like it's aggressive, but he's doing the right thing where it's like he's aggressive, but he's asking and he's making sure, you know, like,
I
so
wanted to bring that up because
I
feel like that scene like comes up more and more often as we're like having these discussions a little more openly. So I thought it was worth bringing up because I had already seen it like sort of like bubble up once 2049 came out. It's just like, is 2049 like romanticizing what is essentially a rape scene and just watching the discourse around that?
Yeah.
So I did want to at least have that conversation. I've also seen a similar conversation come up, not as often because it's not as aggressive, but the same thing with like Rocky and Adrian's first kiss in the first Rocky film.
Yeah. But that's like, again, that's the characters, you know, like it's like Rocky doesn't know what to do around women, you know, he doesn't know.
But there's also there's a weird power dynamic. It also doesn't help that like Stallone is this fucking
just
huge hulking mass,
dude, you know, like,
and Talia Shire's just so like demure and tiny.
I always felt like that was both their characters together, you know, like, and it's not really like, and it's obviously not rape, you know, like, and it's like,
sort of like a similar thing where it's just
aggressive.
Like, it's sort of like, I'm trying to help you confront your own feelings.
Yes. And it's like, and that's like, you know,
which is arguable. So I'm not going to necessarily like I'm not necessarily going to die on the hill, but it is one of those things where there are both instances in both examples of like direct verbal consent.
Yeah. Right. Like, and that's all we're asking for, guys.
Yeah.
That's is fucking consent, enthusiastic consent at any point, you know, like you just got to make sure. And it's funny that that's the point that's brought up instead of being like, is Blade Runner a great anti-cop story? Because that's really what it is being like, these cops are literally hunting down people as like sport almost, you know, like, and doing it in public, and we're all kind of just like, you know, like,
and that gets and that's almost like even worse in 2049, where it's just like we've now made replicants to hunt themselves,
right? And you're just like, and it's this big like kind of anti-cop story, and I first off love that. Second off, I think that it's the main point of this is that like if we callicize ourselves to what is life, we get to points where we're just okay with out in the open murder by our peace officers, you know, like is insane, you know, like, and yeah, and I think Blade Runner has actually aged beautifully in that aspect, where you're like, hey, they were saying something back then that is still happening, you know, like, and you're just like,
something
Jesus.
I always like take away something small every time I rewatch it, which is what like drove me from like watching it, liking it fine, but something was always stick with me. It's just like I should watch that again because I'm still fucking thinking about it.
It's still picking away at me. Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's one of the great things about this movie is it goes beyond it's the TV you're watching, you know, like it really does stick in your brain and make you think a little bit. And you gotta love that, you know, like that's a mark of a great movie, you know, like that carries with you beyond. So on the rating scale of the Warp Shelf, we have the perfect score of pre-order it. We have the perfect score of get the special edition, then pre-order, then we have get it on sale, and nope. So you could get the special edition, the pre-order, get it before it comes out, which is not the case here with this, but you know what we're trying to say, and get it now and stuff like that. I would say that for my ratings, it is an own, you know, like this is a get it now situation. Blade Runner, even if I'm not the biggest fan, I understand that this is a get this right now. And for people who love it, like Deshaun and many others, I'm not putting them down or anything. I think that this is a special edition movie for them. You know, like this is a cult classic in that way that like for some people this is a very like, oh yes, a classic movie. And to others you're like, woo, Blade Runner, you know, like fuck yeah. You know, like, and for those people get the special edition.
I do have a special edition Blu-ray. It's an anniversary edition. Nice. It comes with like every single cut. It comes with that 3.5 hour documentary and a bunch of other like nice paraphernalia to it.
Nice.
And it's got a great cover. It's just like, it's not the like final cut cover that they use on HBO Max, which is also on the recent Blu-ray.
I do like that because it's the
Struzan art.
Yes, which if you didn't know the guy who's been creating your favorite movie posters, go follow him on Facebook, Instagram. It's fucking fantastic.
It is great that it's that, and that is an iconic poster, but I like the simplicity of the Blu-ray I have. I wish I had grabbed it ahead of time. It's just the origami figure of the unicorn in rain.
That's cool. That's cool.
It's just the origami figure and it's raining. That's it.
I love that. That's cool. I don't know if that would have sold the movie back then, but
no, definitely not.
Yeah,
that's definitely like fan of this movie appreciate type of cover for it.
But I mean, I love those old Drew posters. The painted posters are just too fuking good, and I think that Blade Runners is iconic here.
He was at Fan Expo Boston a couple years ago.
Ooh.
And I couldn't afford to get like a nice print of his work that was signed by him because it wasn't cheap.
Yeah,
I wish I had the cash for it because he was selling like all the greats. He had The Thing, he had Back to the Future, and I'm like,
You're like, I love you. I already have some of your work on my walls. I just need an official signed one.
Yeah. Plus to be able to like shake his hand.
Yeah, right. Besides shaking the hand, you can order it on his website and get signed copies. So like if you're into that type of art, which, you know, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably do. He's got it for fucking, I mean, it's expensive, but you know, you're getting like a print from him and it's signed, you know, like, come on, can't beat that shit. And then I think he has a place where you can see his like original arts, like with the actual, like you can see the paint on them and everything, you know, like I would love to fucking see that someday. But besides the point, Blade Runner, good stuff. There's some discourse here of like, does it lose its pacing a little? But that's kind of your feel for it, because I feel like me being like, I kind of lose it a little bit there. Other people will be like, wow, look at that. Fuck yeah. Look at that. You know, like
that's kind of me. It's a film I don't watch all the time, but it's one to put on so I can just sort of absorb it all. This is like a sit at my desk or lay in bed with like something hot to drink and watch and just let it wash over me.
Let it wash over. I feel like that's a good way if any movie is washing over you like that, that's a good way to know you got a good movie, you know, there, you know, like absolutely.
I mean, just the score alone, which we didn't even talk about.
We didn't even talk about the score. How fucking good is that
Vangelis' score? So
Holy
fucking
shit.
amazing.
It's amazing. It fills you sometimes, you know, there's these moments where it does the, and you're just like, it like fills your fucking soul for a second and it spits you back out, you know, like you're like Jesus. And it's just it's iconic. Of course, the sounds from Blade Runner, like the soundtrack there is basically what it gets thrown on to a lot of pop right now, but also the whole genre of vaporwave is slightly coming off of this shit, you know, like you're just like, damn. And I mean, even sort of lo-fi, you know, like hip hop stuff is very still pulling from Blade Runner's like slow feel, you know, like, and you're just like, and the way it's just using horns, you know, like it happens in a lot of music.
Scott talked about his experience of like over the years after Blade Runner had already came and went, about how he would slowly see it being embraced by the culture. Like he would see like the aesthetic of what very much looked like the same city in like music videos and stuff like that, for him to eventually realize like, holy shit, it's actually been like absorbed. It's become,
if you want a modern example, I would say some of the shots of the city here look like some of the shots in the Batman. You know, like there's some shitty shots here that like, and I'm talking about the constructed shots of Gotham that they make where like Bruce is riding around the bike and everything. There's definitely some shots there where you're like, it's a little Blade Runner-y, you know, like you're like, oh, I see, like, you know, I see the influence, you know, like of this like dystopian metropolis just like encroaching on itself constantly, you know, like, and I feel like a lot of people constantly look to those market scenes to get that like full feel of like the scene is extremely full and alive.
Yeah.
You know,
every cyberpunk post Blade Runner has something like that where it's like just like the market scene where you
even
have, like,
fucking Halo had a scene like that. And I was like, you spent a lot of money to make this scene happen when you could have just kept him in the fucking suit. God damn it. No, sorry. Sorry. If you want to watch what's actually good of that Halo show, there's a 5-minute clip on YouTube that has everything good about that show, and that's it. That's all you need. Don't fucking waste your time.
It is funny that you're talking about like the market and stuff like that, because there is the brand curse for Blade Runner that like a lot of the brands that they advertise, like Pan Am and like TDK, are no longer around.
That's kind of it makes this age even more beautifully, you know, like that. It makes it so like another world that like Pan Am somehow survived, you know, like
that's actually the smart thing that 2049 did, is that instead of trying it to be a modern reflection of like what our contemporary time would be in the future, it instead was just like, what does the future of that alternate timeline look like?
Right. It's beautiful.
Like use that as the point. Like we're well beyond the point where like we're actually treating this like this is the real future.
I love that. I do dig this movie. I'm almost glad we did this episode, because I always look down more on Blade Runner, and now rewatching it, I finally like understood, you know, like in a way that College Frank just couldn't, you know, like just couldn't fucking put those. He was very much like, well, it ain't Star Trek, it ain't done in 45 minutes, no plot, you know, like, and you know, like you know, and like that's
is 2001 on the AFI list. There's no way it's not.
Oh my god, yeah, that'll be a rough one for me. That'll be one where I'm like, I'm sorry, like I don't like it. Like but
I'm not huge on it either, but I admire it. I respect it more than I actually enjoy watching it.
Of course, it's like you can't have a movie that constantly is referenced in literally everything and not respect it, you know, like, but you're just kind of like, like, I don't know about that one. Yeah, I'll open the AFI list and see if it's on here, but because I know it's kind of an interesting one. So just for you guys know what we're doing next on this AFI list as I'm looking at it, because we have 97 is Blade Runner, and 96 is Do the Right Thing, which I'm actually super excited to rewatch. I fucking love that movie. And The Last Picture Show is 95. So those are the two next episodes that we're going to be building up to. We're going to do some more current things in between those episodes, but you know how it is. We're going to try.
Love and Thunder just came out, so
so that will be probably our next episode. But what we'll jump on next is Do the Right Thing and The Last Picture Show. So if you're watching along with us, Do the Right Thing and The Last Picture Show, which I'm pretty sure I know for sure Do the Right Thing is on HBO Max and Amazon. I'm pretty sure The Last Picture Show is also on HBO Max. I'm not sure. But for a lot of these older movies, actually, Amazon's been my fucking go-to. It's been working more than Google for some of these older ones, you know? Like, you're like, okay, all right. 2001 A Space Odyssey. Let's see if it's fucking on here. There's so many fucking great movies in here. You're just like, okay. No, I don't. No, it is number 15. Number 15, 2001.
Because I was about to say, the only reason it wouldn't be is maybe it was actually a British production, like A Clockwork Orange was.
Yeah, exactly why it's not. That one's not on this list. You're like, so we will talk about that at some point, but it's way in the future. Like fucking 90 movies away, 90 episodes away.
Get hyped.
Get hyped. But really, guys, thank you for tuning in to these episodes of, I know it's not the newest thing, so I really enjoy, but I enjoy these because they're more film schooly. Like, we're going through these great films. And then you're arguing about great films instead of just being like, nah, this was bad. Get it out. It's like, no, you have to argue why this is not your cup of tea, because this is obviously considered one of the great movies of all time, you know, like, so
there has to be something to that for one reason or another.
Exactly. So, guys, we're not sponsored by AFI, but check out the list yourself. You can go down and check all the ones you've seen, which if you're missing
sponsorship for AFI even work?
I don't know. That would be awesome. If we were just like sponsored by American Film Institute, you know, like, that'd be nice. But they don't care about podcasts. They have their own podcast, I'm pretty sure, which, you know, we could be your official podcast, just saying. But besides getting the bag, the guys, thank you so much for checking out these episodes. Thanks to you for supporting the Warp Shelf podcast in any way you do. You know, make that algorithm work. We appreciate when you do. But we're on everywhere podcast wise. Podcast platform, we're on it. Just search up the Warp Shelf podcast. But you can also watch our beautiful faces on YouTube, where you can subscribe to the Galaxy of Geek YouTube channel and see more of our beautiful faces. But also, if you want to find audio and visual, go to galaxyofgeek.com, where we have every episode of the podcast and also articles that we have done and posted, and lots of other topics and stuff like that. With the new Dragon Ball movie coming out, Deshaun did a list months ago. That was when
Broly was coming out.
Yeah, that was when Broly was coming out, where he ranked every one of the Dragon Ball movies. So if you want a fucking primer on Dragon Ball, that's go watch that. We will be doing that, by the way. That will be an episode. Don't worry. We will be doing
tickets go on sale for that the 22nd, I think. I'm keeping an eye on it.
Sick. So we will be doing that as an episode. I'm super excited. I fucking love talking about anime movies on here. But guys, thank you for your support. Please check out our personal accounts. I'm Frank on Twitter and Instagram.
Mod Karaika.
And then I got Yep Gundam on Instagram, which is lots of Gundams. And thank you guys really for your support. I completely appreciate it. If you want a sticker, if you want a Warp Shelf sticker, DM me. Basically, simple. Find on some of the service, DM me, either on Discord or whatever, and we'll get you a fucking sticker. We want you to get. We want fans to have Warp Shelf stickers. So please hit us up if you want some stickers. We got them. And thank you guys for supporting the show, and get ready for more film in the future. It's going to be a good time.
Yeah, we'll see you then.
Adios, amigos.